Okay, this is a very special version of the No Money Real Estate Podcast. There's a very pointed message that I'm delivering on behalf of 400 real estate investors across Canada. This message is specifically for Doug Ford and the provincial government of Ontario. We're going to undress Bill C-60 and talk about the changes that were just made to how we do multifamily in Ontario. Now, there were some great steps that the government just made, but they fell short. And I'm going to get into it right after this.
Hey, my name's Ken Dunn, and I'm a real estate investor. I want to welcome you to the No Money Real Estate Podcast. On this show, I'm going to interview elite level real estate investors from all over North America. And I'm going to help you to see one thing that all successful real estate investors have in common. They built their portfolios without using a dime of their own money. I've got a portfolio of $300 million in real estate. That includes resorts, apartment buildings, commercial buildings, and I built the entire portfolio without using a dime of my own money. Real estate is a business that anybody can get into, but the strategies that those tight real estate investors use to build massive portfolios have been kept secret for decades. Now, because of this show, I'm going to reveal them to you. So let's get started.
No, look, I really do hope, and I don't know how this is going to happen, but I really hope that the provincial government hears this broadcast or sees this video and has the chance to analyze what I'm saying right now. And for those that are just seeing this for the first time, hopefully some provincial government representatives. My name is Ken Dunn. I'm a real estate developer here in Canada, and I'm in the hospitality space, but I also run one of the fastest growing real estate masterminds in Canada. We have over 430 members right now, and these members are all real estate investors, developers, people looking at doing multifamily projects. And you know what the scariest part about this entire community is? About 60% of the members in our community are based in Ontario, and about half of those people are heavily involved in multifamily real estate. But here's what I found out when we undressed Bill C-60 on a group call last night. Everybody who's doing multifamily real estate as a real estate investor right now is doing it in Alberta. These are all people that over the last 20 years owned multifamily projects, apartment buildings, and 5-plexes and 6-plexes and places being rented out. They have all stopped building projects in Ontario. They have abandoned the province, and now they're seeing incredible successes in Alberta, Canada. Why? Well, it's because of what we're about to start talking about. Now, so everybody understands what's actually happening right now, I think it was a step in the right direction. The provincial government is obviously under a significant amount of pressure, and the pressure is coming from two camps. First of all, the real estate investors. If you want more apartment buildings, if you want more affordable housing in the province of Ontario, you've got to recreate the landscape and make it easier for multifamily real estate investors to succeed in. And the way the rules in Ontario are right now are horrible, and it's not helping at all. It's making people leave the province and start investing in other provinces. When this first started, most of real estate investors in Ontario, in our community anyway, were going to the east coast of Canada. They were actually starting to build apartment buildings and help the province of New Brunswick to get more affordable housing and to get more people into housing. That's where they were focusing their efforts. Then in the province of New Brunswick, they started instituting rules. They started regulating how much rent could be increased and tying the hands of the real estate investors. Because the other side of the coin is real estate investors have to make money. They're not doing this for the fun of it. They're not doing it because they just want to help. They want to make a living doing this as well. And when you penalize the real estate investors and put rent controls in place, you think you're doing the right thing for people, but it's not helping at all. And I'm going to walk you through this as we talk about these changes. So when the province of New Brunswick started changing the rules and started instituting rent control measures, those same real estate investors started looking elsewhere. And they went to the province of Alberta. And now, literally over 100 real estate investors just in our little community are all out in Alberta working and building properties. And you're seeing one real estate market in particular, the city of Edmonton, Alberta, exploding with new construction, with new opportunities and more housing for people. And I know there's a hard part to all of this as well. And we all saw when the Premier of Ontario, Doug Ford, announced these things in a sitting of the House in the province of Ontario, there was a peanut gallery there. There were some people in the audience that were heckling Doug Ford, and these people probably were people that are living in apartments, and I'm hoping they were paying their rent, but from the way they were acting, I almost wonder if they were part of the freeloaders that have caused the problem in the first place. Yes, listen, I'm going to be tight here. I'm going to cut like a knife in some times. And you might not like what I'm actually saying about this, but I'm going to tell you this. If we want to solve the housing crisis in the province of Ontario, then we need to redesign the relationship between the landlord and the leasee, the person that's living there. We need to make a fair playing field. If somebody is living in a property and they're not paying their rent, they need to go. Or they need to start paying their rent. That's what this comes down to. This is not a situation that is complicated. If somebody's not paying for their rent and they entered into an agreement where they should be paying their rent, they need to leave. They need to change that. Or they need to go back to their landlord, explain the situations, and negotiate a better or a different situation. But ignoring it and refusing to pay, that's never going to work. And unless the provincial government goes further to fix that problem, nothing is ever going to help. But hey, you know what? Let's do this. I'm going to pull up a slide on my screen now, and I'm going to talk about exactly what was changed in Bill C-60. So we know we're on the same page. I'm going to go through the major changes that happened, and I'm going to tell you what that actually did, and I'm going to tell you where they should have went further. And if you like what I'm saying, then I want you to go into the notes of the show, and I want you to agree with it. I want you to give me your opinions. And you know what? If you hate what I'm saying, if you're a tenant and you're annoyed by it, then you make your own comments in the post. All right, so we're going to look at the first thing that was changed, and it's eviction compensation. It was removed. So in the old rule, landlords evicting tenants for personal use had to pay 1 month's rent in compensation. And in the new rule, no compensation is required, provided the landlord gives 120 days notice. So here's what would happen. Somebody would buy an 8-plex, and they'd want to move into one of the units. Or they'd have a family member that wanted to move into one of the units. They bought the property. They own the property. They should have the right to move into a unit. And the rules were completely broken. And it was in the law that said the landlord had to pay a month's rent to the person because we wanted them to move out. Now they've changed that. We just have to give them fair notice, 120 days notice. That makes sense. And I'm glad that happened, but I don't think it's far enough. I really don't. I think 120 days is too long. I think if somebody is buying a property, I think 90 days notice would be fair. I think that's the number that's used in a lot of different situations. And I think it makes all the difference in the world. The next one is shorter eviction notices for rent arrears. In the old rule, landlords had to wait 14 days before filing eviction applications for unpaid rent. Now the period has been set to 7 days. Look, the fact of the matter is, in the province of Alberta, if somebody doesn't pay the rent, and if they don't pay the rent in 14 days, you send them an eviction notice and they're out. They get kicked out. And if they don't pay their rent after they've been sent an eviction notice, you can enforce that and you can get a sheriff involved and you can move them out and get somebody else in there. Friends, in a fair market, that's the way it should be. It really is. Because what's going to happen if Ontario is willing to change the rules to the same as Alberta, then somebody is going to rent a property they can afford. Because that's part of the problem. As landlords, we're going to try and do everything we can to try and get the right people into the properties. We're going to do credit checks. We're going to do background checks. We're going to talk to other landlords. We have to do all this stuff to vet the people we're putting in. But there are also people that bite off more than they chew. And they do that because in the province of Ontario, they know that once they get into the place, they can't be held back. Listen, in my own personal situation, I have a duplex in Oshawa. And back in June, I finished renovations and I rented out both units. The people that took our 3-bedroom unit, which was beautiful, it had a hot tub in the backyard, it was a home, it had a huge backyard for the kids, the whole 9 yards. We were asking fair market rent for it. Everything checked out. They paid their first month rent and they never paid another month. They freeloaded for 5 months. And then we went through the application, we filed the forms, we filed the second form, we got a date for a hearing. But check this out. We got our date for a hearing about this matter where they only lived there for 1 month and paid. In October, our hearing was set for May, which meant The province was giving them permission to stay there in May and not pay. And so we ended up putting more pressure on them, and eventually they left in the middle of the night. And that ended up being what it is. Now, as far as this change, it's a good thing for landlords. Again, it's not far enough. It's not even close to being far enough. But if I can serve an eviction notice for rent arrears in 7 days versus 14, for a small amount of people that don't pay rent, that'll be enough. That'll be better because they'll pay their rent sooner, and that'll make all the differences. All right, this is one that I really like. And I'm really, well, I shouldn't say I really like it. It's the next part of this, but the next change that was made was the appeal window was reduced. So in the old rule, tenants had 30 days to appeal the landlord and tenant board decisions made. Now it's 15 days. So basically what that means is if we do end up going to a hearing and a decision is made by the tribunal to kick them out, they have 15 days to appeal. Yeah, I don't even want to say anything about that. Let's move on to the next one. I like this one, the limit on evidence at hearings. So here's what would happen. We'd go through this painful process that sometimes takes a year. They move in the first month. They stop paying rent. They ignore all the notices. They don't communicate with the landlord. This has actually happened to me. And then the hearing is set and they keep ignoring it. But then they get a warning a couple of days before the hearing that says, if you don't show up for this hearing, a warrant will be issued for your arrest. So then they show up to the hearing. And what would happen at the hearing? In any judicial hearing, they have to disclose all of the evidence weeks, if not months before. It gives the other side time to review what they're saying and come up with a defense to their arguments. Well, what was happening at the tribunal is people could show up on the event, and what most of these people that aren't paying rent are doing, they're not even really paying attention to it. They'll just show up that day and complain about a whole bunch of stuff. And because I've never heard it before, and the lawyer that's there with me hasn't heard this before, we have to ask for an adjournment so we can go and review all that information and respond to it. So that just prolongs the whole process even further. The old rules said that tenants could introduce new evidence at the hearing. Now they can't. Renters are barred from introducing new evidence once the hearing has been heard. That's a big move because it's going to keep things moving faster and there'll be less adjournments for doing it. The next thing I want to tell you about in Bill C-60, Bill C-60 gives more power to the housing minister. So what happens is if the municipality is, not helping to build houses, basically you can go to the province and the province will jump in and deal with that. And that's a big deal. The next thing is faster LTB processes. The leasing tenant board is known for taking forever to come to decisions after hearings are over. Sometimes it was months. Now, the bill introduces measures to speed up the decision processes, and that's all about slowing down the backlog and getting all this stuff done and getting everything changed. And friends, those are the biggest issues that made changes. And like I said, some of these changes are good, but it's just not good enough. What I want to talk to you about right now is the number one biggest issue that's happening in multifamily real estate from the real estate investors community. We're putting this forward to everybody. There are 400 serious real estate investors in the province of Ontario that we all met last night in a private meeting. And this is the number one biggest thing that we got out of the whole situation. When we look at the difference between the Alberta real estate market for multifamily real estate and Ontario, and now what New Brunswick has done, the biggest problem is rent control. Now, some of you are going to react to this right away, and you're going to start calling me names and saying I'm part of the problem, but I want you to hear me out on this. Well, actually, you don't have a choice but to hear me out on this, so I'm going to put this right on the table. You could say that by issuing rent controls, you're helping to keep housing affordable, and you're helping to make sure nobody gets gouged when they're doing that. But in a rent control market, there's a bigger consequence that you're not thinking of. In rent controlled markets, landlords turn into slumlords. Let me say this again. This was one of our most successful real estate investors that brought this up last night in our meeting. Landlords turn into slumlords. Think about this for a second. Let's say I buy an 8-unit apartment building and it is incredibly dilapidated. It needs serious renovations. It's a 50-year-old building and nothing's ever been done to it. And some of the things that need to be fixed are on the borderline of dangerous. Like there's some real serious work that needs to be done. But If we're going to put money into a property, we've got to see that money return something to us. In the province of Alberta, if I buy an 8-unit apartment building and I decide I want to put a lot of money into that and make it a more beautiful building, I have the ability to increase the rents to whatever fair market rents are when those renovations are done. Now, if somebody is in the middle of a year-long lease and they're only 3 months into it, I can't breach a contract. Contract law is still the most important law, but when that contract is up for renewal in 8 months, at the end of that 1-year term, I can go back and increase the rent to whatever a fair market rent is. Now listen, in Alberta, if a landlord decides that they're going to jack the rent up so that it's not even fair market value, maybe they're going to try and use a tactic where they want to try and get somebody out of there so they make the rent crazy higher. There are provisions in Alberta where the tenant can go to a board and say that this landlord is not asking for fair market rents. They're jacking it up. They're being onerous in what they're doing. And the board can agree with them and say, this is the most you're going to do. That's all you have to do in Ontario and New Brunswick. Forget about these controlled rents. The way you're doing it is not going to work. All you're going to do is create slumlord. Because in Ontario right now, because there are rent control regulations that say I can only increase the rent by 3% per year, I have no vested interest in investing significant amounts of money. So let's say I buy that 8-unit building. It's completely dilapidated and I need to put $200,000 in it to put new windows and doors in the whole building, to upgrade the heating systems, to redo the kitchens in every unit. But I can only increase the rent by 3%. And even in that case, if I do that, let's say I've got somebody renting a 2-bedroom apartment and they're spending $1,800 a month in rent. And let's say the fair market rent for that unit is $2,300. If I put the money into that unit and literally made it a beautiful unit with all of the most modern finishings, I could get $3,000 for that unit. That would be the new fair market value. I'm not allowed to charge that person who's living in it that money. That's where the system is broken. When you have rent controls, all you're really doing is you're stopping the landlord from spending monies on his properties. Because if I'm going to invest $200,000 in a property, I'm going to look at the total amount that I have in that property, the money I put into it, and I'm going to look at my mortgages, and I want to make sure that I can charge enough money to cover all the expenses of the property and maybe a little bit of profit. And it's really not even a significant amount of profit. What seemed reasonable in the multifamily real estate space is 20%. Which I think anybody who's going to take on the risk of buying the buildings and being the landlord, they deserve that 20%. But if you have lease controls in place, rent controls in place, all you're going to do is you're going to create a market all across Ontario where there are going to be dilapidated old buildings that are never going to get renovated and are going to put people's safety at risk. Now, here's the other part of this equation that we need to look at. We all agree that we need more housing, and the federal government has done amazing things to create an environment where more houses can be built. That most amazing thing is called CMHC MLI Select. So the federal government, using really great wisdom, I really applaud the federal government for this program. They're saying that if somebody wants to build an apartment building, and if you have certain metrics that you adhere to, a certain percentage of your units have to be affordable housing. That means in a certain rent area. The building has to be green, so it has to be done in an energy conservation way, thinking about our environment. So don't use fossil fuels for heating and things like that. And it has to be accessible. So you want to have wheelchair ramps and wider doors. So if you do all of this stuff, the federal government, through CMHC, they will insure a mortgage up to 95% of the value. And over a 50-year amortization, which means the payments that the landlord is going to be making every month for their mortgages is going to be lower and longer. It means more money. This is freaking brilliant. With the CMHC MLI Select program, if the provincial government of Ontario would eliminate rent controls and focus on CMHC MLI Select and put together a new tribunal, eliminate the LTB tribunal. Just get rid of it. It's broken. It doesn't work. Put together a new tribunal that enforces rules like they do in the province of Alberta. Listen, Doug Ford, if you happen to hear this video, Stand up taller, brother. I didn't vote for you in the last election, but seeing what you did with these little changes to Bill 60, I would vote for you if there was an election tomorrow. And if you want more real estate investors, if you want me to go out and campaign for you in your next campaign, do more. Eliminate rent controls. Reform the LTB board. Reform it completely. Adopt the same systems that they have in Alberta. They're building more affordable housing in Alberta. They have more people living in properties, more people moving out there. So if you're telling me that rent control is the secret to affordable housing, you've got your head stuck up your ass. Look at the most successful province in Canada for creating affordable housing today. It's not Ontario. It's not New Brunswick. It's Alberta. Look at what they're doing in Alberta. They've figured it out. You have the most people living in one province in this country. You have more real estate investors in this province than you do in the rest of Canada. And right now, anybody who's seriously thinking about multifamily real estate in Ontario, they're doing it in Alberta. Let's bring our real estate investors back to Ontario. Let's bring the men and women who live in this province. Let's bring their money back. Let's bring their expertise back. Let's get them building more affordable housing in Ontario using CMHC MLI Select. And that's going to start by killing rent controls, dissolving the LTB board, creating a new board that enforces new rules designed to balance the playing field.